Contribution of the legendary sitar maestro of the era, Ustad Vilayat Khan. He developed Gaikiyang on sitar and opened the new avenues in sitar playing. This Gaikiyang of sitar has become his trademark. He was the most leading sitar maestro of the 20th century, but alas, has left for his heavenly abode in the beginning of this century, that is in 2004. Now let's know in detail about the life and the playing style of Ustad Vilayat Khan, musical background and early life. Ustad Vilayat Khan was born on August 28, 1928, in a village of Gauripur, now in Bangladesh, to the mother Bashiran Begum and father Ustad Inayat Khan, who was the leading sitar maestro of the early 20th century. Vilayat Khan was born and brought up in a family of musicians. In fact, his musical background dates back to 16th century. Let's have a glimpse on 3-4 generations back to have a better understanding of Ustad Vilayat Khan's musical background. Vilayat Khan's great-grandfather Sahabdad Khan is said to have invented Surbahar, the bass sitar. Sahabdad Khan was very much influenced by the vocalist Haddu Khan and Hassu Khan of Gwalior Gharana. That is why Dhrupad and Khyal styles of singing were reflected in his playing and choice of rags in sitar. Sahabdad Khan initiated his son Imdad Khan, Vilayat Khan's grandfather, to play both the instruments, surbahar and sitar. When Imdad Khan was very young, his father died, and he learnt music from Bande Ali Khan, the Beankar of Kirana Gharana, and Rajab Ali Khan of Jaipur Gharana. Imdad Khan was later recognized as the legendary sitarist of the late 19th and the early 20th century. He became the court musician of Maharaj Solkar at Indore. This was how Ustad Inayat Khan, Vilayat Khan's father, and his uncle Ustad Wahid Khan spent their early childhood in Indore. Indore in those days was a center where they often got the opportunity to listen to the great vocalist and instrumentalist. Vilayat Khan's father and uncle, both of them got the training in Dhrupad, Dhamar, and Thumri styles of singing, and sitar and surbahar instruments. But his father, Inayat Khan, was attracted more towards sitar than vocal. So father Imdad Khan taught him his family style known as Imdad Khani Gharana or Itawa Gharana. Thus, Inayat Khan and Wahid Khan, both of them emerged as a great musicians and carried their father's tradition. Not only this, they were recognized as the leading musicians of the early 20th century. Wahid Khan emerged as a great surbahar player, while Inayat Khan became a great sitarist. Initially, Inayat Khan was the court musician of Indore, but soon he went to Calcutta, where he came in contact with Brijendra Kishore Roy Chaudhary, who appointed him the court musician of Gauripur in Memansingh, now in Bangladesh. Ustad Inayat Khan's family flourished in Gauripur. Vilayat Khan was born here in Gauripur in 1928. His sister Sharifan Bibi and brother Imrat Khan were also born here only. Training in music. Vilayat Khan was taught in the family tradition known as Imdad Khani or Itawa Gharana, named after a small city close to Agra where Imdad Khan lived. In 1938, when Vilayat Khan was only 10, his father Inayat Khan died, an untimely death. So much of Vilayat Khan's training was done from the rest of his family. His uncle and Surbahar maestro, Ustad Wahid Khan, his maternal grandfather Bande Hassan Khan, and maternal uncle Zinde Hassan Khan, and of course from his mother Bashiran Begum. Bashiran Begum, who belonged to the family of vocalists, helped to train her two young sons, Vilayat and Imrat, after the untimely death of her husband, Ustad Inayat Khan. Vilayat Khan got the early training from the vocalists like his maternal grandfather and uncle. Therefore, he wanted to be a singer. Vilayat Khan's mother, though herself was from the family of vocalists, felt that he had a strong responsibility to carry forward his family's tradition of sitar playing. From 1938 to 1942, Vilayat Khan got the training in singing as well as playing of Surbahar. His mother, Bashiran Begum, herself supervised his rigorous practice of 10 to 12 hours a day. He was trained in sitar from Uncle Wahid Khan and Shri Dhruv Tara Joshi of Lucknow. Shri D.T. Joshi is a well known name in sitar and was a worthy disciple of his father, Ustad Inayat Khan. Not irrelevant to mention that Vilayat Khan was also very much influenced by his contemporary musicians. Amongst those, Ustad Amir Khan, Ustad Fayaz Khan, and Ustad Rajab Ali Khan's name are worth mentioning. Thus, the musical inheritance combined with the systematic training and rigorous practice soon listed him among the leading musicians of his time. But very soon he became ahead of his contemporaries by incorporating Gaikyang of sitar, which opened the new avenues and the new possibilities in sitar playing. This Gaikyang of sitar became his trademark. Music programs. Ustad Vilayat Khan's life sketch will be incomplete without the special mention about his performing career. He attracted the world of music in the very tender age of 12 only, when he performed in Prayag Sangeet Sammelan. The music lovers and the organizers were so much impressed that Vilayat Khan was invited the very next year to perform in the Sammelan. Vilayat Khan performed at All Bengal Music Conference as his first concert, organized by Bhupen Ghosh in Calcutta, now Kolkata, with Ahmed Jan Thirkwa on tabla. His performance made headlines as electrifying sitar in Bombay next day of his concert. In 1944, a music concert was held in Bombay by Congress, where young Vilayat Khan was invited along with all the leading artists of the time. Here too, he astonished the audience with his melodious and electrifying sitar. to such an extent that he had to come on stage again and again on the repeated requests of the music lovers. After this, his recognition spread far and wide, and he was invited in all the major concerts in the country. In 1950s, Vilayat Khan worked closely with instrument makers, especially the famous sitar makers Kanai Lal and Hiran Roy, to develop the instrument according to his playing style. He made some structural changes in sitar, about which I will discuss later on. Thereafter, he proved the wizard of sitar playing. His professional career became very extensive. He made several international tours and performed in Africa, England, Canada, Holland, Poland, France, Germany, Switzerland, and Russia, and acquainted the world with his Gaikyang in sitar. He had been touring outside India off and on for more than 50 years. He was probably the first Indian musician to play in England in 1951 after independence. He had performed in concerts with topmost musicians like Ustad Bismillah Khan on Shehnai, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan on Srod, and his own brother Ustad Imrat Khan on Surbahar.
हमको अपना ले बलमा सोतन को छोड़ के हमको अपना ले बलमा को छोड़ तेरी होके रहूंगी सब जग से नू मोड़ के तेरी होके रहूंगी हमको अपना ले हमको अपना ले बलमा सब जग को छोड़ के हमको अपना ले बलमा सोचन को छोड़ सोचन छोड़ के हमको अपना ले बलमा
Now let's know Gaikyang of sitar playing. Vilayat Khan's emphasis on purity combined with dedication and great perfection has made him the biggest legend in Indian music and culture. He preserved the tradition of Itafa Ghrana and his father Inayat Khan's as well. At the same time, he developed the Gaikyang of sitar while playing Khayal style on it. Thus, he opened the new avenues in sitar playing. Prior to this, sitar, which was considered fit for purely tantrakari or been ang, was introduced to Khayal Ang in the hands of Ustad Vilayat Khan. He developed his Gaikiang on sitar to its full bloom, which became his trademark. He kept his childhood interest of singing alive by bringing closer to instrumental and singing. He often sang bandishes of khayal in the music concerts, followed by his sitar perfectly to correspond to singing.
हमको अपना ले बलमा सौतन को छोड़ के हमको अपना ले को छोड़ तेरी होके रहूंगी सब जग से यूं मोड़ के तेरी होके रहूंगी हमको अपना ले हमको अपना ले बलमा सब जग को छोड़ के हमको अपना ले बलमा सौतन को छोड़ सौतन
He made it possible with the emphasis on right hands technique, especially the mean of four, five, or six notes or swars on one fret. His each and every embellishment on sitar complemented to singing. Also, he liked to perform without tanpura drone, filling out the silence with the strokes of chikari strings. Not irrelevant to mention that the tabla accompanied to his sitar was such as to enhance or to complement to his gaikiyang rather than to intervene in it. In fact, it seems impossible to knit his style in words. The correct intonation of swars, emphasis on purity, mean of four, five, or six notes on one fret, and Spartan are the main characteristics of this Gaikiya, which has been adopted by today's numerous sitar players. This Gaikiang can only be distinguished when you listen to it directly and not just by describing it in words. It's a matter of pride for me that I have got the opportunity to listen to Ustad Vilayat Khan live in concerts many times and got a chance to interview him personally for my queries. His personal life. As stated earlier, that Ustad Vilayat Khan was born in Gauripur and he spent much of his lifetime living in Calcutta. He was married twice. From the first marriage, he had three children, that is, two daughters and one son. Among his two daughters, one is the renowned Sufi singer Zila Khan, and the other one is named Shaman. The great sitarist Ustad Shujat Khan is his illustrious son. From the second marriage, he had one son named Hidayat, who is also a professional sitarist. He is survived also by his younger brother Imrat Khan, the renowned sitar and surbahar player, with whom he played duets in his youth. His nephew, Ustad Rais Khan, is also a renowned sitar player, whose sitar is often heard in the He played duets in his youth. His nephew, Ustad Rais Khan, is also a renowned sitar player, whose sitar is often heard in the old film songs. His disciples. Ustad Vilayat Khan's style and artistry is preserved in the music of his son, the great sitar maestro of the present times, Ustad Shujat Khan. This Gaikiang is very well adopted by his illustrious son, who too often sings before playing, and his sitar perfectly follows his singing. Thus, Ustad Shujat Khan is carrying forward very well the tradition of Itawa Ghrana in India and abroad as well. I feel pride in having the opportunity to listen to him too many times live. Ustad Vilayat Khan took few disciples other than his sons Shujat Khan and Hidayat Khan. Among his disciples, the best known are Kashinath Mukherjee, younger brother of film director Rishikesh Mukherjee, Arvind Parekh, Kalyani Roy, Debashish Datta, his daughter Zila Khan, the great Sufi singer from Imdad Khan Gharana, is his Ganda Band Shagid, that is, his formal disciple or formal student. Ustad Vilayat Khan empowered her to be the successor of this great Gharana. This is worth mentioning that Zila Khan is the first and the only woman of this Gharana who performs in public concerts. Her CDs are also very popular with the masses and the intellects alike. In Punjab, among Ustad Vilayat Khan's disciples, the names of Professor Narinder Narula, Patiala, and Dr. Vrinder Kumar, Jalandhar, are worth mentioning. I, being the student of Professor Narinder Narula, and after receiving from him the professional training in sitar for many years, relate myself with Ustad Vilayat Khan's Gharana. Contribution towards modification of sitar. Ustad Vilayat Khan made a few structural modifications in sitar to match to his Gaikiang. With the help of the famous sitar maker in Calcutta like Hiran Roy, he preferred the tumba, that is gourd or resonator of sitar smaller in size, and avoided upper tumba of sitar also. He preferred one joda string in his sitar instead of two, as were and even today are in vogue. According to him, the tarab were sufficient to produce drone, and moreover, he filled the silence in between while playing with the help of chikari. To match to his style, he replaced kharaj that is brass string of pancham, with the steel string. This he did to make his Gaikiang possible instead of the seriousness of being Ank. Rags. He invented the rags like Inayat Khani, after the name of his father, Sains Ravle, Kalavanti, Mad Bhairav. He reinterpreted some rags like Bhankar and Chechavanti. But he was first and foremost a traditional interpreter of the basic rags such as Shaman, Shri, Todi, Darbari, and Bhairavi. Recordings. Ustad Vilayat Khan composed the music for three feature films. One is Satyajit Roy's film Jalsaghar in Bengali. Second is Merchant Ivory's production The Guru in English. And the third one is Madhusudan Kumar's Kadambri in Hindi. In addition to these films, he also composed music for a little known documentary film in Bengali, produced by Dr. Barin Roy. For the film Jalsaghar, he won silver medal for composing at the first Moscow International Film Festival. Vilayat Khan had been recording for over 65 years, starting from the tender age of 10 or 12 till the end of his life in 2004. In 1990s, his recording career reached a climax when he was recording a series of CDs for India Archive Music in New York. Towards the end of his life, he also performed and recorded on Surbahar. Thus, he had numerous recordings and had scored music for films. Awards and controversy about Ustad Vilayat Khan. It is not irrelevant to mention that Ustad Vilayat Khan's professional career was not without controversies, much of which were the result of his adherence to his own principles. In 1964 and 1968, he was awarded the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan by the Government of India to honor his services for the nation. But he refused to accept these awards, declaring that the committee was incompetent to judge him musically. In the year 2000, he was awarded Padma Bhushan, the second highest civilian award, but again he refused to accept, calling it an insult because the other sitar players, his juniors, and in his opinions, the less deserving, had been awarded with this honor before him. Among other honors which he turned down was Sangeet Natak Academy Award, and for a while he also boycotted All India Radio. The only titles he accepted were of Bharat Sitar Samrat by the Artists Association of India and Aftab Sitar from the President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad. Thus, less caring about awards and being the man of self esteem, he refused to accept awards when he thought that he was not honored with the proper award by the proper persons and in proper time. Though for this, he always remained in controversies. Ustad Vilayat Khan was at the climax of his recordings when he died of lung cancer on March 13, 2004, in Jaslok Hospital in Mumbai. Though he has gone, but will remain alive forever through his singing sitar, which influenced numerous young and old alike. Many of today's prominent musicians and aspiring sitarists look upon him as their ideal and want to follow his path of Gaikian in sitar. To sum up, we can say late Ustad Vilayat Khan was the most influential sitar player of the 20th century who ended up his journey at the first step of 21st century. He developed the Gaikiang or Khyalang of sitar and opened new avenues of sitar playing with the new possibilities in sitar. This Gaikiang became his trademark. Numerous of present day musicians have adopted this style. Whenever we will talk of Gaikiang in sitar, his name will be taken prior to that. Thus, Ustad Vilayat Khan's name has become synonym to Gaikiang of sitar. Thank you.
है कि इंडियन कल्चर संसार भर को चौंका देने वाली अद्भुत कला विद्याओं की ही देन है और इसी भारतीय मिट्टी की एक अनमोल देन है आज के हमारे एनआरआई प्रसिद्ध सितार सम्राट उस्ताद विलायत खां।
आकर पिघल गया मेरे पहलू में आफताब, आकर पिघल गया मेरे पहलू में आफताब, अब देखना है ये कि फना हो रहा है कौन।
आफताब सितार, सितार का सूरज, आफताब सितार। अगर आफताब मौसीकी, आफताब म्यूजिशियन, आफताब एक्टर, आफताब वो बोलते ये नहीं, सितार के बारे में उन्होंने जो लिखा, आफताब सितार, ये मेरी लाइफ का एक बहुत बड़ा ऑनर हुआ, जो इसके पहले और इसके बाद फिर उन्होंने इस अवार्ड को रिपीट नहीं किया।
क्या आपको लगता है कि इंडियन क्लासिकल म्यूजिक की कदर यहाँ वेस्ट में ज्यादा है हमारे हिंदुस्तान से?
यहाँ के लोग इतना ना ही देखने के लिए आते हैं और ना ही इतने समझदार हैं, तो वहाँ देखने के लिए भी